Hello and welcome to another episode of New to Torah. It's kind of like KTC, but it's a little bit different here. We're going to go over a sort of review of common questions that we get when it comes to just starting out. And today's topic is actually, we have a special guest that's going to help cover it. He happens to be very passionate about this particular topic, and he's the perfect guest for this. So we're going to talk about the 7 Noachide Laws and how far is too far when it comes to adopting Torah practices as a non-Jew, particularly, especially my Christian friends, us Christians, as we take on Torah practices. Where's the line? We're going to talk about that tonight with an Orthodox Jewish guest. So, as we transfer into our opening phase here, let me introduce. You guys know this guy. Brad, how are you tonight?
Spectacular, sir. Thank you for remembering.
No. So, yeah, just, I guess, we actually, was it you that first met our guest tonight? Or was it, I think it was you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think initially it was the response I did to one of these people claiming that Leviticus does not make mention of homosexuality, broadly speaking, and that it specifically refers to pedophilia. And I made a video response to it. And I guess he saw it and commented and was able to confirm that my translation of the Hebrew in Leviticus 18:22 was correct. So I followed him immediately, and we've become friends since then, and it's been beautiful.
Wonderful. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to all of you guys Gavriel. You may know him on TikTok as either Jewabilly or Bam Bam, one or the other. And he is actually an instructor here at Alternate Media. He's one of our primary instructors. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Gavriel, how are you tonight?
Good evening. Yes, it has been a fun ride since that first video comment. We've had some pretty interesting conversations since.
Absolutely, and more to come.
Some have been more heated, and some have been more friendly, which is always fun.
But the fact that we're able to walk away and still respect each other and want to continue, that's the important thing.
Yeah, Amen. That's the essence. I mean, that's the good stuff there. So, as is the tradition, first, Brad, since you're over here, what are you drinking tonight?
So I am drinking something new. This it came across my Facebook feed, and I knew that I supported the cause. I ordered it also because my boss at work also supports this kind of a cause. It's called Copper Dog. It is a Scotch blend, and some of the proceeds go towards assisting, animal shelters, humane societies, and things like that. So I figured, why not? It was only $30 for the bottle, and I gotta say, it's pretty good.
I am going with the Bourbon Rabbi, considering that the occasion is a special one. So this is just the 2-year single barrel. And last but not least, Gavriel, what are you having tonight?
Basil Hayden's, just a little bit, just a drop. So,
we were saying backstage. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying backstage when you showed us the Basil Hayden. At first, I was like, of course it is.
That bottle actually is very special to me. A good friend of mine, I built out. He bought a house here, and he lived out in Seattle, and he wanted the carport turned into a single suite apartment. Excuse me, for him, completely kosher and everything. His family was here. He wanted to be able to come here and have his space, and then have the rest of the house to rent out, as an investment property and whatever. And so the last time I saw him, he brought the bottle out, and we had just a couple things left, and he was going to go home, and then he was going to be back in 3 or 4 weeks for the start of Rosh Hashanah and the New Year and all of that, and he passed away in between, and so we never got to open the bottle. So after his son sat Shiva, the two of us sat down and we opened the bottle. and had a toast to him. But yeah,
Wow.
so didn't mean to start on a sad note.
No, no. We're off to a fantastic start. No, so anyway, so Gabrielle, as we go into this topic, I've got a list of questions for you. You've seen the questions. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, whatever it is you want them to know about you. The floor is all yours, my friend.
Sure. So, as he said, I'm Gabriel, also known as Jewbilly on TikTok and most other places now on social media. You might see me as Bam Bam every once in a while, but that's a previous life. A story for a different show. So qualification wise, I started learning Torah about 26, 27 years ago now. This is my 27th cycle through learning the Torah on a weekly basis with the Parsha. I spent 2 years in Jerusalem learning in yeshiva. I have also spent that same amount of time working on my master's in Talmudic law. And I am in the middle of working on smicha, Orthodox Jewish ordination, specifically in the area of kosher slaughter. So that's where, I have a passion for this stuff. It's incredible, and it's so detailed. It's so intricate. The more I learn, the more fun it is. So it's like you can bring anything to me, and it just makes it like somebody asked me about something in Chayasara, not Chayasara, in Toldos, with relations to Rivka and Eliezer going and finding Rivka, and how that related to the Trinity. And I spent 4 days going through different Gemaras and this, that, and the other, looking for that. So it's a passion. Now, yeah, Courtney from Biblical Analytics, Apologetics.
Yes,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah, this is my smoking gun. So, anyways, but part of the reason that the Noachide Laws, this subject we're talking about tonight, is so important to me, is I am, we'll say, thrice over a convert. Now, I have Jewish blood on both sides of my family, going all the way back. In fact, I just finished verifying some information on family that was kicked out of Spain in 1492, and I was able to trace that to Saint Eulisticus Island, I think is what it's called, in the Caribbean, which was the largest Jewish merchant island in the Caribbean. And then from there, they went to Charleston into the 1640s. Bounced around, all that stuff. Anyways, it's just all over the place there. But the big thing is that my grandmother, who was Cherokee Indian, married my grandfather, who was a Reform German Jew. And on the other side, my great-grandmother was a Croatian Jew, and she and her sister were the only ones of my mom's whole side of the family to come out of the Holocaust. And my grandfather, the German Jew, we cannot find any of his family coming out of the Holocaust. And when I started looking into this stuff when I was young, it kind of brought a spark. And so I started researching, I started looking, I started doing more. And as many of you guys probably have done or have experienced, I went through the time of Messianic period. My parents actually started a little Messianic synagogue for a little while in the middle of nowhere, California. And then we moved around a little bit, got bounced out of churches here and there. That was fun. When you are I got stood in front of the pulpit in front of, I don't know how many people, but I was that they did a public exorcism and then kicked me out of the one church. After that, I didn't go back to another church for a while. But then we found Judaism. You don't know
blame
why,
you there.
right? Like, and from the first moment that I sat down in a pew in a synagogue, I was home. And I knew it. And
I know the feeling, honestly, weirdly enough.
And so this is the thing, is like I spent an incredible amount. I spent almost 12 years going from that moment to finishing my third conversion exactly 1 month and a day before getting married to my wife. And that was technical, whatever it was. The third one was basically a suffix, and they call it a suffix gerus. So there was a question on one of the witnesses, so they just did another one to make sure that it was kosher.
Yeah, we've had a few do that.
Yeah, it's very common. It's very, very common now.
It's very unfortunate too. Yeah.
However, that passion, that desire, that, that 12 years now going into, we're going into 24 years now, 25 years again. Wow. I'm the only one in my family who's still with it. And had we known about Noachide, had we known about what that was, things would have been very different for my family. And a lot of pain, a lot of spiritual anguish, physical struggle, anger, hatred between each other could have been avoided. My parents like to say, well, they went through all this and they did this, that, and the other, and they went through the Orthodox conversion so that I could do it. So that I could be who I was. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, but you're just like, you're trying to relieve your guilt by putting it on me, versus had we known, and my mom and dad will straight up, had they known what Noachide living was, what it meant to be, they would not have gone the route they went. And so from that period, which was about 4 or 5 years ago until now, I've done a lot of digging. I've done a lot of asking questions. I've done a lot of trying to figure out why this isn't done more. A lot of people come in and they talk about converting, and they're either, the required pushed away a few times, and then, here, let's start classes and whatever. Or they just kind of say no and they move on and they don't know where to go. And the Orthodox Jewish world doesn't have a setup for this. And we should. This is a huge thing, as we'll see as we talk about this. This is a massive thing. And its meaning and its reason for being here is incredibly important.
Wonderful introduction to the first question, actually. But no, thank you for introducing yourself to the crowd. Real quickly, I just want to remind everyone in the comment section to ask your questions. Leave them in the chat if something comes to mind, and if it is a good question, we will certainly try to address it. And but sure. Moving into our first, I guess, question here. So what exactly are the 7 Noachides anyway?
All right. So the 7 Noachides, base explained in English, would be, right, and I don't know if this is the exact order. the order matters, but establishing laws in courts, not cursing God, meaning like actively making
like a curse.
Not just saying, "Oh God, I'm so angry at you," but like a real curse, which is different. The Rambam talks about how it's different than practicing idolatry, which would be worshiping other gods, and we'll talk about that a little bit. This one's a big one on what counts and how far. The next one is engaging in illicit immorality of a sexual nature, not murdering, right? But that doesn't. There's the room there for war and justice and this and the other, but straight up no murder,
right?
No theft, and then not eating from a live animal. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. A little bit of fun trivia. It was actually the sixth Adamite laws until Noah. All six of those laws were in place except for not eating from the flesh of live animals. That was the only thing that was added with Noah. So those six other things were already in place for all of the world, according to Judaism's belief in what God wants the world to do, with Adam and Chava leaving the Garden of Eden.
That is actually a little detail I was not aware of. But that makes sense.
A clarification question here that I'm curious about myself is, and I've heard Rabbi Manis Friedman speak a little bit to this. So the 7 Noachide Laws, a lot of people mistake that to think that we're talking about 7 individual commandments. But I am led to understand, according to Rabbi Friedman, that these act more to the nature of like how the 10 words are, the 10 commandments. And, so the 10 commandments are a summary of the 613. And so for the 7 Noachides, there would be also, a larger number of individual mitzvahs that are encompassed in the 7. Do you know what the number is, or is that not accurate information?
That's debated. When it comes to, for example, the illicit relationships, most rabbis agree that it's the 10 forbidden relationships in Leviticus 18.
Seems fair.
And then, right. With each one of them, when it comes down to how we would interpret it, most rabbinic opinions that I have found will come in and say, committing idolatry, once they define what idolatry is for a non-Jewish person versus a Jewish person, then the same rules of practicing idolatry that we have would apply to them as well, right? So this is a common thing today with people who argue, well, what about people who have wear a cross or depictions of Jesus on a cross or the saints or things like that, right? How do those come in to, are they considered idol worship or not? And that, there's a big argument between the rabbis as to what constitutes that. Now, a lot of that stems from the fact that the types of things that they talk about with idolatry, especially in the Torah and Tanakh, generally were not things of a benign nature. Molech you're passing children through fire, and Baal was was this thing, and Asherah was this thing, and so it wasn't just looking at a symbol, because we can also say within Judaism we have the same thing, the sin of the golden calf, right? The issue, two issues, but one issue is they got the image wrong, right? The image was supposed to be the cherubim, the cherubim. They were supposed to have the images. They just thought it was the cow, not the cherubim. And so unlike Islam, where they're not allowed to have any kind of religious symbolism. I don't know which one's the right word for this, except for like Islam. Boondock Saints.
Yeah. Symbolism.
Great reference.
It's still waiting for number 3. Anyways, so we don't take it that far, but where do we draw the line? So with each one of these things, that's where we kind of do it. Now, what's interesting is do not steal happens to be the strictest, and by almost every opinion, each one of the 7 is a capital crime. Now, obviously in today's world, it's not something that we could carry out. And the question would be, even if it was, would we do it, or would we hold by the same stringencies that we do with Jews who commit capital offenses? And I was reading several different articles over the last couple of days on this. But for example, when they talk about the part of the reason that stealing is specified here, the generation of the flood, it says that they stole, right?
Yeah.
But they stole for the sake of stealing. It says that they would steal for a sheva pruta, basically about 2 pennies worth. Like they'd steal a bean. Like they're doing it just for the act of stealing. And so when this law is given, it's given with that stringency because of the actions of the generation of the flood. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
When it comes to something like not eating a live animal, for us, a live animal, we've got to make sure that that it's been drained and it's been soaked and then salted and then soaked and soaked and soaked, and all this fun stuff. But for the rest of the world, it's not as strict, right? So with each of these 7, it really is case dependent on the situation. Also where, like one of the things that I talk about all the time, and a lot of people don't like it, left or right, or politically or spiritually, we have all of these laws, we have all of these halachos, we have the 7 mitzvahs here, right? But we also live in the 21st century without a Sanhedrin, without Kohan, without a high priest in the temple with the ephod. We don't have a king, So there's a lot here that it says, this is it. But our hands are kind of tied, So we've got to kind of, we've got to kind of say, okay, how do we deal with that in today's world? Am I going to turn around and scream murderer, 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 and try and get them thrown in jail for life when it's halachically murder, but it's not murder by law of the land kind of thing, if that makes sense?
Yeah. There's a gap in without a Sanhedrin and a central point for Judaism, like with the temple once was. it's really hard to continue a centrality of establishment like that for all of a diaspora, to include like non-Jews that would affiliate themselves in such a way. Yeah,
Right.
it gets complicated. So in fact, just to kind of shift a little bit here. So those are your seven basic laws. Real quick recap for those not keeping total count. No worshiping idols, don't curse God, don't murder, no sexual immorality, don't steal, don't eat the flesh of a living animal, and establish courts of justice. Those are your 7. So this leads into our one of the questions here that is kind of a primary point for tonight's episode. But what does it really like? What does it mean to be a Noachide? In that, like, what really is their role in? I can't tell if you've frozen or not. Is he frozen? I think we lost him.
We may have.
Up.
Nope,
He's moving a little bit.
Everything went dark for me for a second there.
Okay.
Oh,
You're back. There we go.
Give me a second. You're back?
Yep.
You're
Yeah,
back.
we can see you now. Yep. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Something happened.
I thought it was my
technical difficulties.
It's always a. All right, hold on. Okay. Oh, you know what? I can hear you with the speaker. I can just hear you with the speaker. Can you hear me? Fine?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Okay, so fine. I'll just go as is with mic and no headphones.
Perfect. Yeah, you're coming in
right.
just clear too, so you're good.
Cool. All right. So repeat the last part because it broke up.
Yeah, you're fine. So, what does it mean to be a Noachide? Like in sort of the context of things, right? So, first of all, really, what is, I guess, a Noachide as a person, right? Like, is a Christian a Noachide, or is Noachidism something different? And what does that really mean?
All right. So, technically speaking, anybody who is keeping these 7 is under they're by default keeping the Noachide laws. Now, if you want to be, I think the term that most people are looking for when they talk about being a Noachide is actually the true term, in my opinion, would be being a righteous Gentile. All right. So, if you're coming in and Marcus Antoninus or Alexander the Great, there are different people throughout history that are considered righteous Gentiles that followed the 7 Noachide laws. It's just like keeping the mitzvahs doesn't make you a Jew. If I just, I'm keeping Shabbos, that doesn't mean, or if I'm Jewish and I'm not doing things, that doesn't mean that I'm not Jewish anymore, right? The Noachide laws are essentially just the condensed Torah for the klal, for the whole world. And it's the same thing, we have the 613, and all 613 go into the 10, and all of those 10 really go into the 1, right? And it's the same here, right? All of the 7 and everything that you can go into the 7 go back to the same thing. It goes back to believing that, or at least not denying in God. Not denying God. There's a difference. The question is do you have to believe in God specifically, or do you have to just not deny God? It kind of, I think it's more of a it's a low tase. So the halacha is don't curse God. So you don't have to believe in a God. So atheist, you're totally fine. doing the 7 Noachide laws, but to be a righteous Gentile, obviously you would believe in Hashem, and there would be other things to do, but these all integrate into one uniform set of living, and that's the whole point of what we're given. It's a guideline. It's the instruction manual, and it's just a question of how detailed is the instruction manual. And there's a big part of the Noachide laws that's not talked about, and the concept of the righteous Gentiles that's not talked about. Part of that's due to the fact that it's esoteric. Most of it has to do with the fact that we have like post facto, or the names for, or the job descriptions for the names of the nations back then, right? But I think we've talked about this before. Hashem went to each one of the other 69 nations before creating the world, right? And they all said no to this, no to that, no whatever, and we said yes. And then there were each, as a whole, they said no. There were some that said yes. Those are the converts, whatever you want to call it. That's not the relevant part. The relevant part is each one of those 69 other nations has a job to do. Each one of them has a role to play in this world. And they have their own relationship with Hashem that they're supposed to have. And that is severely, especially in today's world, severely lost. And it's more than underappreciated. When I talk to people about it, it's almost vilified. It's kind of like saying, it's like you have an opportunity here to go and explore. You're only doing, not you obviously, but saying, you're only doing the 10 commandments now anyways. So what's wrong with saying, I'm going to go and find something that I connect strongly with, with my God, with the creator of the universe, and I'm going to do my best to make the world a better place through that.
Mm-hmm. So, would you say there's like two kinds of Noachides then? There's like just the general Noachide of the world, and then there's the Noachide who seeks Noachidism from like the Torah and Judaism.
I would say that there's the general Noachide, like the the people that were saying, oh well, I just do the 10 commandments kind of thing. But then the other person that says, well, I have the 7 Noachide, but I want a relationship with Hashem, whether that's following more Torah, whether that's Buddhism, whether that's cleaning up the oceans, whatever it is, going beyond just here's the 7 baseline and creating or searching for a way to connect with Hashem, that's the higher level. That's where you get to the righteous Gentile.
Gotcha. Okay, so that the next question was, what is sort of the role of Noachide? But you actually covered that quite nicely already. But talking about like the two separate Noachides. So I think would it be a fair assumption? This is actually sort of an off the cuff question. Would it be a fair assumption to say that realistically the ideal world is that, the world should learn about the Noachides from the Jews in order to have an understanding and a grasp of what the 7 really mean? Because it's more than just here's 7, right? There's so much more explanation behind the 7. So what does it mean not to commit adultery or to have sexual immorality in relationships? So would you think that like really ideally the world would look to Judaism to have that guidance for the rest of the world?
Ideally, yes. just in the fact that in today's world, we don't seem to have another avenue, if that makes sense. You know,
Okay.
Like with Noah, right? You had Noah, and then you had his sons, and you had Shem and Ava, right? So Shem and his oldest son, the Midrashim and the Talmud talk about they went and started their own yeshiva kind of a deal, right? But they weren't teaching Torah like this. They were essentially teaching being a righteous Gentile, being a Noachide, like to the full degree. Melchizedek, right? Who is the great grandson of Shem and the great grandfather of Abraham, right? He's a priest, but he's a Noachide priest, right? So there was at a time, and this also, you know, when there's a, I don't argue when people talk about the concept of like Christianity and the priesthood of Melchizedek and this, that, and the other, because it's not like, if they're going based on, if we're going to say let's go by Noachide laws, then there's no problem. If they're talking about usurping not Abrahamic, Levitical priesthood, then you have an issue, because Melchizedek gave over the priesthood to Abraham when they met after the Battle of the Four Kings. So he remained the high priest of the Noachides. And then when he died, Abraham took over the priesthood completely. And that passed down to Isaac, to Jacob, then to Aaron.
And eventually, yeah, all the way to Levi and Aaron.
Right.
But
we don't have, just like we don't have records of the 10 tribes, where they went and how that works. We've lost all these different things between Babylon and Syria and Rome and all that. Like, what we have today in Orthodoxy, we attempt to keep as close as we can to what we understand the original is to be. So then we also wouldn't come to you and tell you, like, if you come to us and say, teach us this, tell us how this works, we'll give you the information, and then you do with it as you will. You know, we're not going to sit there and say, well, now that you know this, we're going to start policing you around. And I think there's another group out there that would do that in that capacity, if that makes sense.
So, I have a question, I guess, later at the end, actually, that kind of makes me have a thought. But we're just kind of looking at the clock here. We got a couple more questions left for you. And the big question that I really want to get to is in the title of tonight's show. So, so the next one is this one. So this one mostly comes from our, so you know what it is we do here, here at Ultimate Media. You're one of our instructors, but we are primarily a Orthodox Jewish leaning, like Nazarenes, I guess, like Notzri, in that Ultimate Media particularly, we do hold that Yeshua is Mashiach ben Yosef, and that's me and Brad particularly. But so most of our audience is, you know, usually like a Christian, quote unquote, who is a Torah observer, who doesn't believe that Jesus is God, by and large. Not every one of them. Looking at you, Bobby. But you know, not all of them. But most of our audience are non-Trinitarian, and so they don't really have a a desire to convert to Judaism, as that's in the New Testament, it's basically discouraged to convert. And so this
Right.
question is kind of a big one for some of the newer listeners that we get. We get this question fairly often, like, can someone like a Noahide, go to shul or join in the daily prayers and essentially continue in a sort of Torah observant lifestyle to a particular extent?
Yes. Yes. So we'll start off with the restrictions first, and then explanation later. It's a good way to do it, I guess. So there's really only three things that Judaism says are closed practice.
Mhm.
And Seamus, you know this. Brad, I think we've talked about this too.
Yeah.
But for everybody who's listening, in particular, so the three things are: you're not supposed to learn Torah lishma. Now, it's really hard to translate into English what lishma means, because lishma means
Like
in the name of,
to
or to be in the
joy.
name. Yeah,
Oh,
and it's or
For its own sake.
yeah.
right. And
It's
so
really
the
hard.
easy right. So the easiest way to put it is like, you can't have any other reason for learning Torah except for saying, I want to get a spiritual high. Like, that's the
Mm.
best way I've been able to figure out how to explain it. So I mean, I don't even do, like, I mean, I might have once or twice, but like, I'm not so well versed in it, even after all of this time, that I can sit down and say, okay, well, I'm just reading this, and then as soon as there's, well, wait a second, I don't remember the word saying it this way, or this commentary said something. They're like, I don't remember saying. As soon as, boom, ulterior motive,
Yeah, now
lishma
you're
is
learning.
gone.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a very hard thing for even a Jew to do. And I would say that there's probably, maybe a few hundred to 1,000 Jews in the world that are like at that point that they could do that once in a while.
People like the Gra.
Yeah. Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, people like that, where like they're literally, their whole life from when they wake up to when they wake up is Torah.
Mhm.
So that's pretty easy for people. You just, as soon as you say, well, I want to understand this, or how does this make sense, boom, it's done, and you can just keep
Yeah.
learning Torah and go, and you're good, right? The second really applies to pretty much just men. There are cases, and it is not, we're not going to get into the feminism and whatnot here, but by and large, it is a men's mitzvah only to wear tefillin. There is no good rational explanation for this. This is one of those where it is a case of, we just say, sorry, this is, all of the things that you can do with my partner, if you will. This is the one thing you can't do with my partner. And if you think about it, the placement of the tefillin kind of gives it's as close to, without being lewd, it's about as close to intimate placement as you can get too. Because the box on the arm, it's tucked into your arm, so when it's sitting down, it's tucking in right into your chest. It's supposed to be pointing right at your heart. And the one for your forehead is supposed to be sitting right where your spiritual third eye is, where you're supposed to be able to be comprehending and seeing, not literally, obviously, but seeing the divine. They say where our extra neshama resides, or the extra part of our neshama resides on Shabbat and holidays.
which is why you don't wear tefillin on a Yom Tov or on Shabbat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because we've got that extra part of the neshama. So that one really is just for men. Some say that you're not supposed. Some people say on the women's side you're not supposed to keep all of the family purity laws, but I don't have any real halachic basis that I've been able to find for that. So if anybody says that to a woman, it's like, oh well, you can't go to the mikveh and be ritually clean or something like. It might be hard to find a mikveh that will take you if you're not Jewish.
Yeah.
But there's ways around that, and if you need to, just message me, get a hold of me, we can talk about that.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, just for the audience, the mikveh is an incredibly intimate and private affair. So much so that like if my wife were to go to a mikveh, this is just a hypothetical, no one is supposed to know that she's there. Right. And so it will never be public information that when she went and why she was there. And so it's the
women who run it. The women who run it do not. The one we have here in Atlanta is very nice. They have like individual bathrooms for like up to 7 women, but each woman stays in the bathroom until the other person has gone through the mikveh and gone back and gone to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And nobody can see who's in the building other than the 2 mikveh ladies, the attendants, because they have to have somebody watching to make sure that it's all of the hair and everything has gotten wet. And technically the laws are true for men. It's the same for men as well. If I don't dunk completely, I also don't. But mine is not a case with it not being in the temple, having temple, being tahor and all that for the temple, it's a different level. Yeah. But anyway, so that's that subject. And then the third one is keeping Shabbat completely. This is the one where I tend to get the most pushback. And this one's also one that people need to understand is also it's very intimate. In many ways, and it's also very easy to say I'm not keeping Shabbat completely, especially for those people who cook or use their phone or drive I can list 200 things that you can do with without even thinking, to where you've broken the Sabbath and you're good to go. When you're converting, like even that last Shabbat before you convert, still can't keep the Sabbath completely. I remember, I'm going through, I'm doing everything, and I'm practicing, and I'm doing everything, and then it's like, oh, I've got to remember, and so I just flipped the light switch on and off. I was like, okay, I broke the Sabbath this week, and then the next week after the mikveh happened, then I had to remember, oh wait, I'm now not supposed to break the Sabbath anymore. And it was actually harder. Right. It was harder at that point. But that's also an intimacy thing. You can take the tefillin to be like personal touch, if you will, and you can take Shabbat to be like date night or something like that. I mean, that's what, like, when we're singing Shalom Aleichem, when we sing Eshes Chayil, and we're sitting down to eat, I mean, we literally are singing songs about the bride of the Sabbath, of our relationship as husband and wife. It's a very intimate time. So that's where and even then, if somebody's like, no, I'm going to do it anyway, like, we don't come to your house and like put a big old mug and daven in your front yard and light it on fire. So it's just we ask for you not to do it, But those are the 3 don't do's.
So basically, just in general summary, The first one, the studying Torah for the sake of just pure enjoyment and no learning, nothing else, which is hard to do anyway. That one's easy. As soon as you learn or want to learn something, you have a different motive. So that one's easy. The tefillin, which a lot of, actually, funny enough, a lot of Messianics tend to not like the tefillin idea anyway, like the wrapping with the leather and everything. By and large, Hebrew roots and Messianic movements do not like the tefillin thing, so that's not really usually an issue.
They reject it on the basis of thinking it's Talmudic.
Yeah, the conservative and the Reformed Jews don't like it either. Neither do the Karaites.
Yeah, so for a lot of exactly. So for a lot of Messianics, that's not an issue. And then of course the Sabbath one, even then, unless you're a Messianic who is trying to observe Sabbath exactly the way that Orthodoxy does, which is incredibly rare, then you're sort of already like, you flip a light switch and you can observe it there. And that's personally, so I go to an Orthodox shul. And that's what they asked me to do. I go to a person's house every
you're
week.
A Shabbat boy.
Yeah, well, no, because they don't ask me to like do anything explicitly.
They can't. Yeah, they can't.
And so I show up and I do everything minus I will flip a light switch. I'll just find a random one in the house that's off, and I'll turn it off or turn it on, and then turn it back off in case they wanted it off. Just I don't know. But they'll witness it, and so they can be the witness, saying, "All right, I did my one thing, and then I'm Sabbath observant from that point forward." But so relatively not so. So this and so with our last final minutes here, so this is one of the weird parts. So, like we said, this is incredibly rare for a Messianic to want to observe in the Orthodox manner. Now, we here at Alternate Media, we actually do encourage that believers in Yeshua follow after the Orthodox manner as a testament to their the righteousness of Yeshua, and taking it upon themselves to go the extra mile and meet Judaism where they are too, and show their devotion to their Messiah in such a way. So we encourage that here, as as I basically just admitted on air, that I go to an Orthodox shul. So I live an incredibly Orthodox lifestyle, minus wrapping tefillin every morning, which I can't do. But yeah, so we do get this question though, as people start to sort of come see our show more, and we answer their questions. How far, like how much more are they allowed to go, and exactly where is the line? The very next banner, it's like, how far is too far for a non-Jew for Torah and Orthodoxy? So these kind of go hand in hand. Right. So like where exactly would be the line? Kind of take it away.
All right. So both of them I think can be answered in conjunction pretty easily. So the first thing is honesty. All right, you're gonna want to, if you go to a Chabad or you go to a local Orthodox synagogue or something like that, call them during the week before, if you have the opportunity, before everything starts. Says, hi, introduce yourself. This is who I am. I'm interested in this. Here in Atlanta, we get this all the time. I mean, every week there are people that are in there that are exploring, they're searching, and whatever it is. And please, we want you to come in and see, and you're allowed to fully participate. Now, you're not going to count as a male, right? If there's 9 other guys and you, then there's not a minion of 10 men. So they're not going to read the Torah or something like that. Outside of that, like, it's going to be fine, and you'll be able to fully participate in everything. But again, the big thing is being honest. We've had some real problems over the last 3 or 4 years in multiple communities across the country of missionaries disguising themselves as Orthodox Jews coming in and basically living like an Orthodox Jew for several years. They do a lot of research beforehand. And they come in and they're like, oh yeah, we moved from X community, this, that, and the other. They'll name, they'll drop a name of a rabbi or whatever. And then they'll start going. And then, 8 months, 10 months into their living, they'll start, talking about this messianic concept or, Yeshua this or whatever it is. And when things get figured out, people get very, very, very upset and very hurt. Yeah. We'd much rather you just say up front, this is what I believe, and we're happy to have you. The deception is the problem. So, and again, just ask, don't be afraid to. Judaism lives, our lifeblood is asking. Right? If you are uncomfortable asking for directions, this is not the right place for you. So, you come in and you're asking this, asking that, asking the other. You start asking questions, you'll get a group of 10 Jews around you, all telling you their own opinion on how to answer it. They'll invite you over to people's houses. There are certain things that you'll learn as time goes on, like we're not technically supposed to formally invite you to a Passover Seder, right? But we could say, oh yeah, our Passover Seder is going to start Tuesday night at about 8:30, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And then there'd be a place set for you if you want to show up, kind of thing. When it comes to quote unquote cultural appropriation, kind of follow a little bit where you are, because it will be a little bit more community dependent. As a general rule, though, if you're in the Orthodox world, unless you're coming in and like throwing on a kapata and a strimel and gartels and this, that, and the other, like they're not gonna. If you come in and I'm wearing a button-down shirt and slacks and even a suit jacket, a flat hat. I mean, how many of us have? Who doesn't have?
Oh.
Well, and then the collection of fedoras and cowboy hats and the other. All of that's fine. Practicing is fine. Asking questions is fine. But again, it's the same thing. Just be open and ask. And the more you ask, the more they tell you. The more they tell you, the more you'll find out what you can and can't do. And the biggest thing that's going to hold you back from what's too far is not whether or not you're allowed to do it. The going too far is going to be, I saw something on YouTube, or I read this thing in a book, and I decided to jump in and do this, and I show up to shul one day, and here's X, Y, and Z, and people are like, whoa, hold on a second. And even then, it's mostly more of a case of like, people are like, why in the world are you doing that? Like, there's no reason for you to do that. That's not the way it's done. Versus just saying, hey, I saw this YouTube video, or I'm interested in this concept or whatever. Tell me about it. And then they will. And then you'll be like, okay, well, what do you think I should do about this? And then they'll guide you, And the only thing that's too far are those three things in particular, except for the one other caveat I would say. Hold on. Sorry.
No, you're good.
The one other caveat would be going around and claiming, like going around wearing everything, right? Putting on the black and white and the fedora and growing out the payas and the beard, and claiming to be an Orthodox Jew, but not. Like, now if you come in and you're saying, I'm in process, or I'm converting, or I'm Noachide and I'm learning, again, everybody's going to be fine. Almost everybody's going to be fine with it. And that's the big thing. Communication and asking questions. That's gonna get you much farther than anything else.
Yeah. Forgive me if I reveal too much here, sir, but before I moved to this Orthodox community, I actually called you and asked for like some advice. And so anyway, long story short, I sort of overreacted. I called ahead, let them know I was coming. I got there. Everyone was incredibly friendly to me. Within a week, I asked, I said, hey, is it okay if I wear the kippah and the black hat and the suit and the tie and everything and the seats? And they were like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
but
so
you did the right thing. You asked.
Yeah. And I was very warmly welcomed, which again was incredibly surprising to me. It's not what I expected. And so just as a word of encouragement too.
You're in sorry, this is my brain. You're in Norfolk, right?
Maybe.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, I happen to know a few people from there that are amazing people. Everybody I've met that's from that community are amazing people. So I can definitely see that. So
and luckily for me too, there's a lot of most of the community is made up of a majority of converts actually. So when I kind of showed up, they were like, we know where you're at. We know what you've been through. We know what it's like. You're welcome here. And so it was a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Atlanta, when I first started coming into Atlanta in 2008, 2009, whatever it was, when I started dating my wife, it was all like everybody that was a little bit older than me, or like it was the same thing, either converts or they didn't grow up religious, and got religious in college or whatever. And we're all now, kids are ranging from high school to preschool, and we're all sitting here going, they're giving classes. The rabbis are giving classes to the parents on how to raise children that are growing up religious, because we don't know how to do it. Like, we didn't grow up religious. We don't know. like my son sitting there, like we were talking the other day, and he wanted to take something to he wanted to take crackers to his bed or something. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, Pesach's right around the corner. I'm not gonna... And he's like, Abba, don't worry about it. We'll put a towel down, and any crumbs that go, they'll get on the towel. We'll wash the towel. It'll be fine. The halacha is fine with that. I'm like, no, you can't be telling me halacha at 8. It's not okay.
No, here's what's not okay. I was at a Shabbos table, and they were doing a Devar Torah, and it was kids, and so they had like this pretend scenario about a goldfish that died, and so the friend buys a replacement fish, and he puts it in the tank, and he leaves, and his friend calls him up, and he's like, "What'd you do?" And he didn't know his fish had died. He's like, "What'd you do? All my fish are dead -1." And he's like, "Oh, well, one of your fish died, so I went out and I bought a replacement while you were gone, and I replaced them, and I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to, I just wanted it to be like a hidden nice thing." And he's like, "Yeah, well, it killed all my fish, the one you bought." And so, and so in the Devar Torah, there's like an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old all sitting at the table, and they're like, "All right, so who's liable for damages?" And the 8-year-old goes, "He didn't receive the gift officially, so it never transferred to ownership, which means the giver is liable for the damages." And I was like, "You're 8."
Yeah. We were talking about the laws, Hashavas Aveda, returning lost objects. And my son found this thing on the playground at school, and I'm like, well, we should take it to the school and put it in a lost and found. Abba, like I asked my classmates, and they were the ones who were out there. And I asked the rabbi, and I said, okay, and your point is? He said, Well, the rabbi said I did my hishtadlus. Like I put in my effort. Like I don't have to do hashavas aveda now. There's not a what do you, a
It's not an
simon.
obligation.
No. There's not a simon. There's not a sign. There's not something on there indicating a specific owner. So now that I just asked in general and made it public that there was a lost thing and nobody came forward, so now I get to have. It's like, how? Like, why? Like I'm gonna have to go. Like I have to go and get smicha just so I can keep up with him.
So, all right. So one more last, a little bonus question
Sure.
here.
All right.
And so this one is once again sort of geared towards our Messianic Gentile, largely Messianic Gentile audience. And I don't know if we made it clear or not, but you, just for our audience, you yourself are not a Messianic believer. You know, you're just Orthodox Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to make that just so no one was getting confused. But so from your perspective as a non-Yeshua believer, Orthodox Jewish man, would you actually be in a position, or not, would you encourage that Messianic Gentiles observe Orthodoxy, or if they want to, or would you say that they probably should, or what would be, like, what would you say to this particular question?
Cool. Well, we'll ask a clarifying question here. When you say Messianic, are you talking about people who, are you talking about say like evangelical Christians who are interested in keeping more of Torah, or people who identify themselves in a group called the Messianic? Like, and then
so it's an important clarification.
Yeah, it is actually.
And then on top of that is the belief, and I'll use Jesus specifically because this will help clarify. Is the belief in Jesus one like Mashiach, but not God, or Son of God / Trinitarian kind of a deal? Because those are very like those 4 points will determine the answer. I could give scenarios for each one of those.
Right.
You want real quick?
I think if I may, Seamus, because you know we tend to think on the same pattern. I think the question is, you know, would you encourage people who are believers that Yeshua is Messiah in the same fashion that Seamus and myself do, but are not Trinitarians and wanting to grow closer to Hashem and follow after Yeshua's example? Would you encourage them to observe Orthodoxy?
I would say
it's okay if the answer is no.
No. I'm trying to. I want to say, it's not that I want to. I want to say this in a clear, sensitive way that I don't want it to be misunderstood, and I'm not saying something mean. I just don't want it to be misunderstood. Like, so.
And these are Gentiles. These are non-Jews.
Right. Yeah. There's no intention of converting. There's no. Right. So I think the important thing to ask yourself in that journey and in that desire to practice is, am I doing this because I think that there's truth? Because most of what you're going to practice today is rabbinic, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to have, it's the same thing with converts. And I do this all the time. I actually interview people who are potential converts. And this is one of the conversations that we have. You know, are you okay with Judaism today being, this is Judaism. We know that this is not the same Judaism as 2,000 years ago. We know that things have changed or have been lost or whatever it is. No Orthodox Jew with a straight mind will tell you otherwise,
Mm.
right?
Right.
So understanding that when you're looking at orthodoxy and you're looking at Torah observance, and you're saying, I'm looking at it through the lens of a 21st century rabbinic Judaism. And I'm okay with that, understanding that this is not how Yeshua, Jesus, wherever you want to use for the name there, lived. But I believe that his practice today would fall in line with this group of people. Then I would say yes. Then pursuing that, learning more, finding your comfort level within that would be appropriate. If, however, it's a case of, I'm not about the man made this. I did a TikTok video this morning on something like this, and it was like, for anybody who's watching, if you want to know, it is one of the 613 commandments, by the way, to listen to the rabbis. Deuteronomy 17, 8 through 13. That's the only chapter and verse that I have memorized. By the way, because we don't work on memorization. We actually specifically try not to memorize things, because then it becomes rote, and if it becomes rote, it loses meaning. But yeah. So if you go look at what it says if there are things that are difficult for you, you don't understand, whatever it is, you go to the judge, you go to the priest, and they make a ruling. And at the end of it, it says, and if you don't follow it, remove the evil from Israel and have the person killed. It's a capital offense to disobey the rulings of the rabbis. Now, we do understand that there's different levels where Sanhedrin, so there's halacha, right? There's Torah Shebeksav, there's the written Torah itself, right? And there's those mitzvahs that are written down on the cubes of sapphire stone, the miracle that it was all written all in one, right? The second level is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and that's mitzvahs like tefillin, right? People think that tefillin is rabbinic. It's not. It's God told Moses the commandment of tefillin and how to do it. It was never rabbinic. It was straight from him.
It's like basically Mishnaic, more or less, because Talmudic is rabbinic. Yeah.
Right. So it's second. That's secondary. And anything in that halacha l'Moshe Sinai is essentially the status in today's world, the same status as if it was written in the Torah. Sanhedrin level law is stepped down from there. And that runs through Deuteronomy 17, as I quoted. And there's no argument within traditional or Orthodox Judaism that's there. What we get into, right, and this is a big thing, this is a different topic for a later subject, when we talk about adding on to jots and tittles and this, that, and the other, that's a different story. But from once Sanhedrin is down, right, everything that we have today, right, turning on light switches for Shabbat, or this kind of thing is kosher, that kind of thing is not kosher, this and the other. We're not making new laws. What we're doing was we're taking the situation we have and we're finding the category, we're finding the box that it fits in and placing it there.
De Rabbanim.
De Rabbanan, right? So for you to understand, that's what rabbinic Judaism is for everybody who's watching. So there's not a big jump from Torah Judaism to rabbinic Judaism. Rabbinic Judaism is just taking all of the cases that have come before the rabbis, that have come before the courts, and I go, well, what about this? And the rabbis go, okay, well, it fits into this box, so keep it
Precedence.
like it says in this, right? And it's in this box. That's rabbinic Judaism, right?
It's like Supreme Court precedence law.
Exactly. Then you get into Masorah and
agadic material,
and that's all the other stuff. But like,
right.
So if you're okay with that, if you're okay with saying I understand, because Jesus more than likely held, he was not a Sadducee, right? And he wasn't an Essean, as far as I can tell. So he held rabbinical authority to some degree. So if you want to follow in his footsteps, then you also should hold to rabbinical authority in some degree. So the explanation would be, this is how we see rabbinic authority today. I'm not making new laws. It's not 615 mitzvahs, 645 mitzvahs, 732 mitzvahs. It's where does this situation that I have in front of me fit in the 613? Mm-hmm. So if you can deal with that, and you can come and you can say, okay, I can work with that, and have that kind of mindset, you're going to have a much better time. And it will actually make learning the halachas, learning the minhagim, learning the origins of where these things come from, it'll make it much more enjoyable. Because instead of fighting it, instead of saying, well, the laws of man and the this, that, and the other, you're not looking at it that way. You're looking at it as the how did they, why did they choose to put this in that box? Mm-hmm. To me, that's one of the most fascinating things about learning the Talmud and learning Shulchan Aruch and all that is, well, why did they put that in that box? Like, I would have put it in this box over here.
Yeah. Oftentimes when I research it, I'm like, that sounds dumb. Let me find out why they think that. And then I look into it. I'm like, actually, that's a good point. Like, they really got something going on for them there.
Exactly.
So that would actually be my general answer to regarding the objections, and with respect to the idea that rabbinic Judaism today is not the same as it was in the first century. I would still say that, well, as far as what Yeshua said, he still said to heed the words of the Pharisees, right?
Right.
And that's a direct command. It's not a suggestion. He's telling his followers to do this. And rabbinic Judaism of the modern age came as an outgrowth of the decisions of those Pharisees over time. So, even by the words of Jesus himself, if you're a follower of him, this really seems like the path you should be on.
Right. Exactly.
We've said that here on the channel so much, it feels like we're just beating a horse.
But it's an important one. I mean, heck, we beat the same horse every week with Shabbat and with everything. Like Judaism, what are they in the Rav Volbe, who is a turn of the 20th century, a brilliant mind, brilliant educator. We still use his methods today. He's probably the best modern educator. Solomon Schechter, Beis Yaakov, and all of them, they all use his methods. Mm-hmm. And he really is one of these people that comes in and it's learn out, why is this happening this way? What's the reason? Where's the purpose? What, I'm finding out the baseline, and then from the baseline I can go and I can stack onto it, and I can say, okay, now I understand here. But one of the big things that he says, because how can you understand, how can you remember that baseline? You've got to repeat it, you've got to chazer it, you've got to do it 100 times. We do this in our davening when we go in Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. The Ashkenaz Siddur starts for Shmona Esrei. They do the prayer for rain, right? Mashiv Haruach Amrei Geshem, right? Well, they say for the first month and a day, if you don't if you're done with it and you don't remember if you said it or not, you go back and redo it, because the assumption is you haven't repeated it enough for it to become habit. But at a month and the second day, you've reached that threshold, and then you can say, well, I'm assuming that I've repeated or that I've done it, so I don't have to go back and repeat it. It's a very common way that we do things.
There's certainly a lot, and on our first episode of New to Torah, actually, one thing that we stress a lot is taking things slow. You know, there's no reason to learn everything all at once. To kind of just, take your time, really, really learn it, really understand it before moving on. Master the one thing before you move on to another thing, kind of thing.
Well, you'll burn yourself. You'll flat out burn yourself out.
Yeah. That's very true. And we've seen people do that. We've seen people be like immediately sort of gung ho and all about it, and they jump headfirst into it. And then, about maybe 6 months to a year, it's just more than they can handle. And so that they get so tired, they lose sleep over it. And then they just start kind of just walking out of it, because they have too many irons in the fire that they eventually start pulling those irons back out until they've got nothing left but, kind of just going back into the world the way they came in,
That's the biggest objection people have. There's a zeal, and you love it, right? They shine so brightly. I have to do this. I have to be this way. When they come in, and I sit there and I look at them and I go, are you ready to be so thoroughly alone that you think that there's nobody in the world that loves you? And they'll sit back and they're like, what are you talking about? I said, because 8 years from now, 12 years from now, you're going to have days. December 25th, if your family was big with that, you're going to sit there and you might be having a Basil Haydn's or whatever. and you're going to say, wow, I wish I had my family. And you haven't lost your family, but you have lost your family. This is why in the Torah, it always says, take care of the widow, the orphan, and the convert. Because they're all essentially the same. Right? They're all people who have lost the important people in their life. And if they don't have a support system, then it goes away. And this is I kid you not. In my research, and yes, it's technically anecdotal. Well, I guess I'd call it study research. I've been doing it long enough now. But I have interviewed almost 350 converts at this point. And out of the 350 converts, only about 47 or 48 of us are still practicing after a decade. And one of the biggest reasons is the loneliness. And I still feel it. I have 3 children that I love to death. I have an amazing wife. I could not have a better wife. And I have, don't let my in-laws know it, but I have incredible in-laws. I lucked out when it came to in-laws. I really did. But it's not the same. When the fact that my parents have never heard me sing Kiddush Friday night on a tune that I made up myself hurts. And that's where that's where that life can be so incredibly fulfilling, because you don't have to be Jewish to do amazing things and have an amazing relationship with God.
Mhm.
It's the opposite.
And even
Like, it's totally the opposite. In a lot of ways, converts end up having worse relationships because of things like this. If they're not actively keeping it up, if they're not actively going and finding those things, then they get into that trap. Yeah. So sorry, that kind of took a darker turn.
no, you're fine. There's a reason I usually introduce myself as a Ger Toshav, because it's like
Right.
I'm a very Orthodox observant Noachide who's not.
I have asked Rav. So Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky. Do you know who he is? Either of
I'm
you?
not familiar. No.
So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, his father, and Rav Moshe Feinstein were probably the two biggest American rabbis of the 20th century. And Rav Kamenetsky and Rav Kamenetsky, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky and then Rav Kamenetsky, were probably the two in the middle 20th century, and then Rav Kamenetsky is the only one alive now into the 21st century, but he is in America without a doubt, if not the top rabbi. There's only one or two rabbis that would outpace him outside of Hasidic rabbis, and the only reason the Hasidic rabbis would do that is because of the devotion of their followers, not on a actual Torah knowledge or anything scale. He's an incredible man. Absolutely incredible man. And I'm very fortunate enough that my rabbi's father is his gabbai.
Oh.
Yes. So if I have a question that my rabbi doesn't know the answer to, I can get an answer from him within 48 hours.
From like a posik.
Yeah, from the posik, right? Like, Rav Berkowitz, who is my rabbi's rabbi, his teacher, and then Rav Berkowitz in his cousin in Israel. Between those three, those are the three top, outside of kosher, those are the three top Ashkenazi rabbis in the world. And I can be in touch with them and have an answer from them within 48 hours, unless it's, a Chag or something. And with each one of them, when I've asked them questions, and this is something, part of the reason, you guys know Pirkei Avos, right?
Yeah, one of our favorites.
So in Pirkei Avos, right, it says, have a friend, but it says, aseh lecha l'rav. Whoops, my fidget just fell. Aseh lecha l'rav. It says, take for yourself a rabbi, right? Mm-hmm. Well, why does it say find a friend and take a rabbi, right? And this is my own personal interpretation. The reason I think that it says take a rabbi is because the weakest link on that is the student or the non-rabbi with the other end of, I guess, student, yeah. But it's an active, like, you have to actively commit to that person being the person that you trust, and it's a big deal. I went through 11 rabbis before I settled on my Rav, and when I finally decided, it was really funny. I went up and I shook his hand and I put my hand on his shoulder, right at his delt, and I said, Rabbi. He looks at me, said, I have something very serious to say to you. And he goes, okay, Gabriel, what is it this time? And I said, I'm a selech ala raving you. What? I said, I'm taking you as my rabbi. You do not get a choice in this matter. You're now my rabbi, and that's it. You don't get a choice. And he kind of looked at me and he said, in all of my years of being a rabbi, nobody's ever told me that I'm the rabbi before. That I don't have a choice in the matter. But what it did is it opened up. At that point, I was able to turn around and say, okay, this is what I need. This is what I want. And I got to know him, and he got to know me. And this follows in line with Noachide. There needs to be something like this for the Noachide community, for the people that want a relationship with Hashem outside of Christianity, not necessarily within Judaism, but that somebody like a spiritual leader, guide, some whatever that can come in and help them with these things. And I don't have an answer. I'm presenting this this is something I've thought about for years, and I don't know. And so anybody who's watching, listening, whatever, like, I really think that there should be somebody, like a figurehead of sorts. And I think it should be a Rav. I think that there should be a rabbi who's willing to step up and say, I'm going to be the one who will will take on the responsibility here, because like, what else do you have? How many people are you able, like, there's me, there's Moshe, there's a couple other guys, but like,
I was just going to say,
there.
you are working on your rabbinic ordination, so
And I'm working on this institute. I mean, my whole thing as this goes on is like, I have the potential to help an incredible amount of people here, and I don't want to massage my ego or anything. It's just one of those things that, like, what I wish I could have provided for my family 15 years ago, and what I have tried to help other people figure out and work with over the past 15 years, like, it's important and it's so special. People don't get that. They think, oh, well, I'm not part of the chosen people. I'm not part of Israel. I'm not part of the Torah. No, it's such an incredible thing. Like, a righteous Gentile stands there just as high as a tzaddik does.
You heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first. Sanhedrin 59, bravo.
Right? Like if when Alexander the Great went into Jerusalem and went to the Sanhedrin, and he I don't know the right word, but he paid respect to them and then said, I want to bring korbanos to Hashem. I want to give sacrifices to Hashem in the correct manner. Jews have named their boys Alexander for over 2,000 years because of this man. I mean, you have Solomon, David, Daniel. I mean, you name a list of 10 Jews that have the same honor. Like one Noachide, like one righteous Gentile does something like this. And it's that important. Like, whether it's Marcus Aurelius or Marcus Antoninus, whoever it is, I don't know. Like, it's the same thing. These people through history that come up and say, no, I don't have to be Jewish, but I know that I, as a human being, have a relationship with my Creator, and I have this to do. Like the Greeks, with the rabbis talk about, the Greeks were so close. They were so close to having their job correct. They just went a little too far. Their job was to beautify the physical world. And they went from beautifying the physical world to sexualizing the physical world. Had they not made that leap, they would have done their job, and we as Israel would not have done our job. Who would have been the better group of people? You know, like it's that heavy. Each group has this, and that's why it's so hard to say nations today. Yeah, the original 69 nations, we don't know who's who. So forget the nations. You've got your purpose. You say, okay, well, 7, I'm not comfortable with 7. I'll do the 10. Fine, do the 10. You know, but understand you don't have to be Israel. This is the biggest thing I argue with BHI. You know, Black Hebrew Israelites come like they're promoting a victim mentality. They're promoting a slave mentality that was pushed on them. Instead of coming in and saying, let's go and look at our roots. Let's look at our culture. Let's do this. Let's build ourselves up and make something of ourselves that is us, that is unique to us. And we can serve God in a way that is unique to us. What are they doing? They're turning around and they're playing the victim and the slavery card.
That's a whole other episode we could have a conversation. And honestly, we need to cover that one. And I think we're probably going to plan to have a panel of all of us on. With definitely Gabrielle, you're going to be back on for that one. We'll probably have Moshe and a few others on as well, because that's a discussion that definitely warrants the myriad of views that there are to express within our group.
A lot of people, and I'm sorry, I know we went a lot longer than we were supposed to. This was a lot of fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep,
absolutely,
totally fine.
This was an episode that warrants a little more attention, and I'm glad that we were able to give it. And definitely, you know, thanks to you, Gabrielle, for making the time to do this. We greatly appreciate it.
Happy to.
I know the viewers did too. That being said, we do tend to have the after parties afterwards. Gabrielle, you don't have to make time for that, but I know that everybody who's joining would definitely love to hear from you if you can. But you know, shalom bayis, make the wife happy first.
So I'll go talk to her real quick, and if she's okay with it, I'll join you guys in the Discord in a few minutes.
Absolutely,
no pressure.
So,
all right.
Yeah, no pressure at all.
No. I understand.
For everyone else,
to anybody who's listening, like if you've got personal questions, send me a message. You've got the discussion thing. Ask me questions. Tag me. And just as a notice for anybody who's watching who doesn't know in the Discord or anything, I happen to have this brain thing that's going on right now that messes with my eyes and all of that. And sometimes I physically am not able to read the screen. And sometimes it can last for a couple hours. Sometimes it can last for a couple of days. So if I'm not on, I don't see it, don't respond right away. Don't think that I'm ignoring you. Like I literally, this from Saturday morning until yesterday afternoon, I could barely see. So it's I want to be there. I want to do everything with it, but don't feel like I'm ignoring anybody. Don't feel that your questions don't matter. I just want you guys to know that it might take me a little bit if something's going on with my eyes. So
absolutely. And that being said, that is where we're going to be headed. Everybody who is watching, to get access to the after parties, you can become a supporting Patreon supporter or support at the website. Either one gets you access to the exclusive privileges of paying members. There is free content on both. Free content on the website, free content on the Patreon, free content on the YouTube. But the membership does come with certain privileges, one of them being the after parties, where you can meet with us after the show, and it's a lot more chillax. It's a different environment. You get to spend some personal time with all of us and pick our brains, roast us, whatever you want to do. So,
Is it voice? Is it voice or is it type?
voice.
It's voice.
It's voice. Okay, it might be a little bit easier that way. Okay, cool. Alrighty, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Let's not wait so long to do this again.
Amen.
Agreed.
And to everybody at home.
Yeah. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.